In this video, we will discuss the movie Greyhound. We will discuss the story, summarize the plot, explore the cast and characters. Additionally, we will cover the film production detail and box office performance. Finally, we will share reviews and personal reaction. So let's get started. When we begin a discussion about Greyhound, it had to slow down and appreciate why this particular film deserves attention in the first place. At a glance, it might seem like just another war movie, but the deeper you look, the more you realize it stands apart in tone, style, and storytelling approach. First, let's consider the genre. Greyhound sits firmly within the war and action categories, but it does not follow the traditional path many war films take. Unlike large-scale epic filled with multiple storylines and emotional backstories, this film narrows its focus. It places us directly inside a naval escort mission during World War II, especially in the tense and dangerous Battle of the Atlantic. Instead of giving us a wide angle view of war, it zooms in intensely on a single responsibility, survival at sea. This makes the experience feel immediate and almost suffocating, as if we are trapped on the ship alongside the crew. Now turning to the director, Aaron Schneider bring a very disciplined and restrained vision to the film. His direction avoid unnecessary distraction. There are no exaggerated subplot or overly dramatic character art. Instead, Schneider focuses on precision. Every command, every radar signal, every movement of the ship is presented with clarity and urgency. This approach mirrors the reality of naval warfare, where decision must be quick and accurate. It's a style that respects the intelligence of the audience, trusting viewers to stay engaged without needing constant explanation. And other important aspect to warm up our discussion is the film's production style, which is perhaps its most defining feature. Greyhound is remarkably minimalistic in structure. Much of the film takes place abroad a single destroyer ship, and storytelling unfold in what feels like near real time. There are very few breaks in the session and almost no cutaways cut away to other location. This creates a sense of continuous tension, as if the film itself never has a chance to breathe. What makes this production style even more compelling is its reliance on sound and communication. Dialogue in the films is often technical, filled with naval technology, terminology, and rapid fire commands. Rather than simplifying this language for the audience, the film embraces it. The result is a more immersive experience. You are not just watching a battle, you are trying to keep up with it. This choice may feel overwhelming at first, but it ultimately strengthens the realism and intensity. We should also acknowledge the presence of Tom Hanks, who not only stars in the film but also wrote the screenplay. His involvement adds another layer of significance. Hanks has long been associated with World War II storytelling, and here he brings a quiet, controlled performance that matches the film's overall tone. Rather than portraying a loud or heroic leader, he presents a captain who is thoughtful, pressure, and deeply aware of the weight of his decision. So, why is Greyhound worth discussing? Because it challenges expectation. It strips away the usual comforts of storytelling and replace them with tension, discipline, and realism. It asks the audience to stay alert, to listen carefully, and to experience war not as a spectacle but as a relentless test of endurance and leadership. The production budget of the Greyhound reflects a careful control and efficient approach to filmmaking, especially within the war genre. With an estimated cost of around $50 million, the film sits comfortably in the mid-budget range. This is notably lower than many modern war films, yet it still manages to deliver a visually convincing and immersive experience. From an analytical standpoint, This budget level suggests a deliberate strategy to focus on intensity and realism without relying on large scale expensive battle. A significant portion of the budget was likely directed toward visual effect because of the story centered on naval warfare during World War II. The filmmaker had to recreate the Atlantic Ocean warship and German submarine with a high degree of realism. Filming actual naval battle is not practical, so computer generated imagery becomes essential. The ocean itself, along with the explosion, torpedoes, and radar sequence, require detailed digital work. Even though the setting appears simple, the technical demand behind creating a believable environment is substantial, making visual effect one of the most resource intensive aspects of the production. Another important area of spending involves set design. Much of the films take place inside a destroyer ship, particularly on the command bridge and with their communication areas. This interior had to be built with attention to historical accuracy while also allowing space for cameras and actors to move naturally. By concentrating the action within a limited number of interior sets, the production avoids the high cost associated with shooting in multiple locations. This container approach not only reduces expense but also support the film's tense and focused storytelling style. The involvement of Tom Hanks also play a role in budget allocation as both the lead actors and the screenwriters. His participation likely required a meaningful portion of the overall cost. However, the set of the cast is relatively modest compared to a larger war films that feature multiple high profile actors. This suggests that the film prioritized performance and narrative efficiency over star driven marketing. Similarly, director Aaron Scary adopt a restrained visual style, avoiding unnecessary extravagance and focusing instead of on clarity and realism. When compared to the other war films, the budget of the Greyhound highlighted its efficiency. Films like Dunkirk 1917 and The Midway all had budget close to or exceeding $100 million. Those productions rely heavily on large scale set, real world location, and extensive use of extras. In contrast, Greyhound achieve a comparable level of tension and engagement at roughly half the cost. This is largely due to its narrow narrative focus, shorter runtime, and reliance on controlled environment rather than expensive battle sequence. Overall, the budget of Greyhound demonstrates a strategic use of resources instead of spreading funds across multiple large-scale elements. The film concentrated spending on key areas such as visual effect and set design. This allowed it to maintain a high level of realism while avoiding the financial demand of blockbuster filmmaking. The result is a film that feels intense and authentic without requiring the scale or expense typically associated with the war genre. The genre and the overall the mood of Greyhound work together to create a tightly controlled and intensely focused cinematic experience. While the film clearly belonged to the war and action genres, it distinguished itself through its minimalistic storytelling and highly concentrated atmosphere. Rather than presenting a bold or emotional war narrative, it narrowed its lens to a single naval mission during World War II, shaping both its genre identity and emotional tone. At its core, Greyhound is a naval war thriller. This subgenre emphasizes strategy, tension, and survival over spectacle or personal drama. Unlike many traditional war films that explore soldiers' background, relationship, or the large political context, this film remains almost entirely focused on the operational aspect of warfare. The audience is placed directly in the command center of a destroyer ship, experiencing events as they unfold in real time. This approach allows the film more closely with the suspense thriller than a conventional war epic. The atmosphere of the film is one of the constant pressure and confinement. From the beginning, there is a sense and danger that danger is always present, even when nothing visible is happening. The ocean, which might feel vast and fearing is instead portrayed as isolating and threatening. There is no safe space for the character, only the endless possibility of attack from unseen submarines below the surface. This creates an atmosphere that feels both expansive and claustrophobic at the same time. The limited physical setting of the ship enhances this feeling as the characters are confined to tight spaces filled with urgent communication and rapid decision making. In terms of pacing, Greyhound is notably fast and relentless. The films run for about 90 minutes and it rarely slows down. There are no extended breaks for reflection or emotional development. Instead, the narrative moves from one moment of tension to the next, maintaining a steady rhythm of alerts, commands, and compact sequence. This pacing mirrors the reality of the situation being deposited, where there is little time to rest or think beyond the immediate task. For the viewer, this creates a sense of urgency and immersion, but it can also feel overwhelming as the film offers very few moments to process what is happening. The tone of the film is serious, disciplined, and restrained. There is no attempt to romanticize war or present it as heroic in a traditional sense. Instead, the tone reflects the harsh and demanding nature of naval combat. The character speaks in precise, technical language, often using naval terminology that is not simplified for the audience. This choice reinforces the film's commitment to realism and add to its serious tone. The absence of humor or light-hearted moment further emphasizes the gravity of the situation. Stylistically, the film adopts a minimalistic and immersion approach. Director Aaron Schneider avoid elaborate visual flourishes and instead focusing on Aaron Schneider avoid elaborate visual flourishes and instead focusing on clarity and function. The camera often remains close to the action, particularly within the ship command center, giving the viewer a sense of being part of the crew. Sound design also play a crucial role with radar peaks, engine noise, and shooted command, creating an auditory environment that is just as important as the visual. Dialogue is rapid and continuous, contributing to the film's intense visual rhythm. The performances of Tom Hanks also shape the film's mood. His portrayal of the Captain Krause is calm and controlled even under extreme pressure. This understated performance complements the film's overall tone, reinforcing the ideas that leadership in such require composure rather than dramatic expression. Overall, the genre and the mood of the film are defined by their focus on tension, realism, and immediacy. It is not a war film that seeks to tell a wide-ranging story or evoke deep emotional arc. Instead, it creates a sustained atmosphere of suspense and responsibility, using pacing, tone, and stylistic restraint to immerse the audience in a single high-stake mission. Before watching the film, audience often approach it with a set of expectations shaped by its genre, cast, and historical setting. These expectations vary depending on viewers' demographics, familiarity with war films, and personal preferences for storytelling style. Understanding these preconceptions help explain how different audiences may respond to the films even before it being. From a viewer's demographic perspective, Greyhound naturally attract audiences who are interested in military history, particularly events related to the World War II. Older viewers or those with an appreciation for historical accuracy may expect a respectful or realistic depiction of naval warfare. At the same time, younger audience, especially students or casual viewers, might be drawn in by the film's action element and its relatively short runtime. The presence of Tom Hanks also burdened the audience appeal. Many viewers associate him with thoughts, high quality storytelling, particularly in war related narrative. So there is an expectation of a serious and well crafted performances. For general audience, there is often an assumption that the film will deliver a balance between action and emotional storytelling. War films frequently include personal backstories, character development, and moment of reflection. As a result, viewers may initially expect Greyhound to follow a similar pattern, offering insight into the lives and emotions of the crew alongside the action. However, those familiar with more focused or minimalistic films may anticipate a tighter narrative that prioritizes mission driven storytelling over personal drama. Looking at anticipated theme, many viewers expect the film to explore ideas such as leadership, sacrifice, courage, and survival. Given the setting in a high stake naval assault mission, there is a natural expectation that the story will highlight the pressure of command and the responsibility of protecting others. Audience may also anticipate themes of teamwork and coordination as naval operations depend heavily on communication and discipline. Additionally, because the story takes place in a dangerous and isolated environment, viewer may expect an emotional exploration of fear, uncertainty, and resilience. There is also an expectation of moral clarity, which is common in many World War II narratives. Audience often approach such film with the understanding that they will deposit a clear between opposing sides, focusing on duty and the fight against a defined enemy. However, some viewers may also anticipate a more modern approach that emphasizes the human cost of war rather than glorifying it. These differing expectations can influence how the film's tone and narrative choices are received. For genre fans, particularly those who enjoy war and action film, expectations are often shaped by comparison to other well known titles. Viewers who appreciate large scale production may expect sweeping battle scenes, multiple locations, and a wide cast of characters. Film in this category often deliver visually grand experience, so there may be an assumption that Greyhound will offer similar spectacle. At the same time, fans of a more realistic or tactical war film may look forward to detailed appreciation of naval strategy, communication, and combat mechanics. Another important expectation among genre fans is the level of intensity. War thrillers are often associated with suspense and high stakes, so viewers may anticipate a constant sense of danger and urgency. The idea of a convoy being hunted by submarine suggests a tense cat and mouse dynamic which can create excitement even before the film's being. However, expectation about pacing can differ. Some viewers may expect moments of quiet build up between action sequence while others may anticipate a fast moving narrative with continuous engagement. Stylistically, audience may also form expectations based on the involvement of Aaron Schneider, while not as widely recognized as some blockbuster director. His approach suggests a more restrained, focused filmmaking style. This can lead some viewers to expect a film that emphasizes realism and discipline rather than dramatic flair. Combined with Tom Hanks' influence as both actor and writer, there is an expectation of a film that value authenticity in clarity or exaggeration. Overall, audience expectations for the film are shaped by a combination of factors including historical interest, genre familiarity, and the reputation of its lead actor. Some viewers approach it anticipating a traditional war drama with emotional depth, while others expect a tightly focused and intense naval thriller. These expectations create a framework through which the film is experienced, influencing how its pacing, tone, and narrative choices are interpreted once the story unfolds. When examining the target audience of the film, it becomes clear that the film is designed for a specific type of viewers rather than broad, all-encompassing audience. Its focused narrative style, restrained tone, and emphasis on realism shape who is almost likely to engage with and appreciate the experience. In terms of age group, the film is primarily suited for teenager and adult, roughly age 15 and above. While the film does not rely on graphic violence or inappropriate content, its storytelling demands a certain level of attention and maturity. Younger viewers may find it difficult to follow the rapid dialogue and technical naval terminology The film does not pose to explain its language or simplify its concept, which themed it expect the audience to keep up with command strategies and military procedures. Older viewers, particularly those with an interest in history or disciplined storytelling, are more likely to connect with its structure and pacing. Additionally, viewers who have grown up watching traditional war films may find its tone familiar and engaging. Looking at interest, the film strongly appeal to individuals who are drawn to military history and strategic conflict, especially events related to World War II. People who enjoy learning about naval operations, wartime decision making, and real world combat scenarios are likely to find the films compelling. It is less about personal drama and more about operational tension. So, viewers who appreciate process oriented storytelling, where the focus in how the things happen rather than why character feel a certain way, will be particularly interested. The film also target viewers who value realism and immersion instead of dramatizing events with exaggerated emotions or cinematic spectacle. It presents a controlled and authentic environment. This makes it appealing to audiences who prefer a grounded approach to storytelling. For example, individuals who enjoy analyzing how leadership work under pressure and how teams function in high stakes situations may find the film especially engaging. The character of Captain Cruz, portrayed by Tom Hanks, reflecting this interest as his role centered on decision making, discipline, responsibility rather than personal backstory. In terms of genre preferences, the film is more clearly aimed at fans of war film and action thriller, particularly those who appreciate a minimalistic and focused narrative style. Unlike large scale war epics that span multiple locations and storyline, this film concentrates on a single mission and a limited setting. This makes it ideal for viewers who enjoy tight, high pressure scenarios rather than expensive storytelling. Fans of naval or submarine based films will also find it appealing as it captures the tension of cat and mouse warfare on the ocean. However, the film is less suited for viewers who prefer character driven dramas or emotionally layered storytelling. Those who look for deep personal or romantic subplot and extensive character development may find the film somewhat limited. It does not spend much time exploring the inner lives of its character, nor does it provide detailed backstories. Instead, it focuses almost entirely on the immediate situation. This makes it a more specialized experience, appealing to a niche within the broader war genre. The film also aligns with viewers who prefer short, fast-paced content within a runtime of around 90 minutes and few moment. It caters to audience who want an intense experience without a long time commitment. This can be particularly appealing to modern viewers who are accustomed to concise storytelling and continuous engagement. Another important aspect of the target audience is those who appreciate technical detail and authenticity. The film uses realistic dialogue and does not simplify military communication for inconvenience. This can be highly rewarded for viewers who enjoy understanding the mechanics of naval warfare, but it may feel overwhelming for those unfamiliar with such terminology. As a result, the film tends to attract viewers who are neither knowledgeable about or curious about military system and operation. The involvement of Aaron Schneider also line a signal a certain audience expectation. His restrained directing style suggests that the film is intended for viewers who appreciate subtitling and control rather than dramatic film. Combined with Tom Hanks' reputation for thoughtful storytelling, this positions the film as a serious and disciplined viewing experience. Overall, the film is made for viewers who value intensity, realism, and focus over spectacle and emotional complexity. Target an audience that is interested in history, strategy, and mechanics of war, rather than one seeking broad entertainment or character-driven narrative. While it may not appeal equally to all demographics, it effectively serves those who are looking for a concentrated and immersive war thriller experience. The emotional experience promised by the film is distinct from many traditional war films. Rather than offering a deeply personal or sentimental journey, the film delivers a controlled, high-pressure, emotional environment built around tension, discipline, and sustained uncertainty. Its emotional impact comes less from dramatic character arc and more from the immersive intensity of the situation itself. In terms of mood, the film establishes a constant sense and alertness from the very beginning. This is a very emotional fluctuation. Instead, the mood remains tightly wound throughout. The audience is placed in a state of near continuous mirroring the experience of the crew aboard the ship. The open ocean, instead of feeling calm or expansive, become a source of unease. Danger is not always visible, which make it more psychologically unsettling. The threat of unseen submarine lurking beneath the surface create a persistent feeling that something could be wrong at any moment. This sustained tension defines the emotional tone, making the experience feel intense rather than emotionally varied. The film mood is also shaped by its sustain. There are no exaggerated emotional outbursts or overly dramatic scenes. Instead, emotions are expressed through small control moment, brief glances, and pauses in speech or the weight carried in the scene. This subtitle approach reinforces the seriousness of the situation. It suggests that in moments of extreme pressure, emotions are often suppressed in favor of focus and responsibility for the viewer. This creates a quieter but more concentrated emotional engagement where the intensity comes from what is not said as much as from what is shown. Looking at the theme, the film centers on ideas such as duty and endurance, all set against the backdrop of the World War II. The emotional experience is shaped by the burden of responsibility placed on Captain Krause, portrayed by Tom Hanks. His role is not just to navigate the ship but to protect an entire convoy of vessels and the lives they carry. This creates a strong sense of pressure and accountability, which become a very emotional driver throughout the film. Another important theme is isolation. Even though the crew is physically together, they are emotionally isolated by the circumstances. There is little time for personal connection or reflection. The vastness of the ocean and the absence of immediate support amplify this feeling. These ships operate in a space where help is not readily available and decisions must be made independently. This isolation contributes a sense of vulnerability, making the audience feel the weight of every choice. The film also touches on faith and inner strength through in a subtitle way. Captain Cruz is shown relying on his internal discipline and belief to maintain composure. This adds a layer of quiet resilience to the emotional experience. Rather than presenting courage as loud or heroic, the film portrays it as a steady and control, emphasizing persistence over dramatic triumph. When considering the intended impact, it becomes clear that Greyhound aimed to immerse the audience in the feeling of being in command during a crisis. The film does not seek to make viewers cry or form deeper emotional attachment to individual character. Instead, it wants the audience to feel the decision making under pressure. Every command, every radar signal, every moment of silence and carries weight. This creates a form of engagement that is more psychological than emotional in the traditional sense. The pacing of the film play a crucial role in shaping this impact because the narrative rarely slows down. The audience has little time to process event emotionally. This mirrors the experience of the character who must move from one situation to the next without pause. As a result, the emotional experience becomes one of sustained intensity rather than reflection. Viewers are not given space to step back. They are kept inside the moment, sharing in the urgency and responsibility. Stylistically, the film reinforces its emotional goal through sound and dialogue. The constant exchange of command, the noise of the ship, and the tension in the communication all contribute to a heightened sensory experience. This makes the emotional impact feel immediate and immersive rather than guiding the audience toward a specific emotional reaction. The film allows the situation itself to generate feeling. Overall, the emotional experience of the film is defined by its focus on tension, control, and realism. It promises a journey that is less about emotional highs and lows and more about maintaining composure in the face of constant threat. The result is an experience that feels intense, discipline, and immersive, leaving the audience with a lasting sense of what it might feel like to carry responsibility in a life or death situation. At its core, Greyhound is not simply a story about naval combat or a mission during World War II. Instead, it presents a more abstract and focused exploration of responsibility, control, and human endurance under sustained pressure. The film strips away many of the conventional storytelling elements such as extensive character background, emotional subplot, and concentrate on a singular idea, what it means to carry the weight of leadership when every decision has immediate and irreversible consequence. The central story concept revolves around a confined system in motion. A group of ships travel through a hostile environment guided by a leader who must constantly interpret incomplete information and act without certainty. In this sense, the narrative becomes less about physical movement across the ocean and more about the mental and moral navigation of risk. The ocean itself functions as an abstract space, vast and unpredictable and indifferent, within which human intention is constantly tested. The unseen threat beneath the surface reinforced the idea that danger is not always visible and that leadership often involves responding to that can't be fully understood. Within this framework, the film explored the theme of responsibility as an ongoing uninterrupted state. The protagonist, portrayed by Tom Hanks, is not given the luxury of stepping outside his role. His identity becomes inseparable from his duty. This reflection a broader idea that in high stake environment individuals are defined not by who they are in isolation but by how they function within a system that depends on them. Responsibility here is not presenting as a burden that can be set aside. It is continuous, demanding constant awareness and decision making. Another key theme is control versus uncertainty. The film places its character in a situation where complete control is impossible. Information is limited, time is constrained, and outcomes are unpredictable. Yet, despite this limitation, decision must still be made with confidence and precision. This tension between what is known and what must be acted upon create a philosophical layer to the story. It suggests that leadership is not about eliminating uncertainty but about managing it. Making choices in condition with clarity is never granted. The film also engaged with the idea of discipline as a form of stability. The structured environment of the ship within its protocols, command, and routine act as a counterbalance to the chaos of the central world. This contrast highlight an important message that system and discipline are not merely functioning tools but psychological anchor. They provide a sense of order in situations that might otherwise feel overwhelming. The system repeated pattern of communication and action reinforce the notion that stability is something that must be actively maintained, not passively accused. In terms of message, the film suggests that true leadership is often quiet and unremarkable in appearance yet profound in impact. It does not rely on dramatic speeches or visible heroism. Instead, it is expressed through consistency, restraint, and the ability to remain composed under pressure. The absence of overt emotional expression in the protagonist's behavior emphasizes this idea. Leadership in this context is less about inspiring others through charisma and more about sustaining a system through relatability and clarity. The film also touches on the theme of isolation, both physical and psychological. Even within a collective environment, the act of decision making can be isolating. The leader must absorb information, weigh risk, and issue command, often without the opportunity for shared reflection. This creates a separation between the individual and the group, even as they walk toward a common goal. The vastness of the ocean amplifies this sense of isolation, turning it into a metaphor for the distance between certainty and doubt. Another layer of the core idea involved time expression. The narrative unfolds in a way that emphasizes continuity with little interpretation or pause. This reflects the idea that time in high stakes situation is not a neutral backdrop but an active force. It compresses decision making, limit options, and heighten consequence. The ability to stop or slow down, reinforcing the urgency of every action, suggesting that endurance is not just physical but temporal. The ability to persist through unrelenting progression. The film minimalistic structure support its abstract core by removing unnecessary narrative. It direct attention toward processes rather than outcome. What matters is not just whether the mission succeeds but how it is carried out. This shift in focus aligns the story within a more conceptual exploration of human behavior under constraint. It invites the viewer to consider not only the events themselves but the condition under which those events unfold. Ultimately, the core idea of Greyhound can be understood as an examination of how individuals function within a system of extreme pressure and uncertainty. It presents and leadership as an ongoing negotiation between control and unpredictability, responsibility and limitation, isolation and coordination. Through its restrained storytelling and concentrated focus, the film communicates a message that extends beyond its immediate setting, that the essence of strength lies not in dramatic action but in sustained composure and the ability to act decisively when certainty is out of reach. The central conflict of the film operates on a level that goes far beyond a simple struggle between opposing forces. While the surface narrative is rooted in warm time conditions during World War II, the deeper conflict is internal, structural, and philosophical. It revolves around the situation between responsibility and uncertainty, control and limitation, and the constant of making the scene in an environment where the stakes are absolute. At the heart of this conflict, like a profound moral dilemma, how to act decisively when every choice carries potential, and how leadership in this context is not about choosing between right and wrong in a clear sense, but without navigating between competing risks. Every decision has consequences that can't be fully predicted, and the absence of certainty transforms even the most logical choice into a moral burden. The individual in command, portrayed by Tom Hanks, must constantly balance the obligation to protect others with the reality that complete safety is unattainable. This creates a persistent ethical tension where action and restraint are both fraught with consequence. Another dimension of the central conflict is the challenge of limited knowledge. The environment in which the story unfolds is defined by incomplete information. Signals are partial, threats are not always visible, and time does not allow for extended analysis. This limitation transforms decision making into an act of interpretation rather than certainty. The conflict, therefore, is not only external but cognitive. It exists within the process of understanding itself. How to read a situation accurately when the available data is fragmented. This challenge intensifies the pressure on leadership. A decision must be made quickly even when clarity is out of reach. The film also explored the tension between individual responsibility and collective dependence. The system within which the character operates relies on coordination, discipline, yet it ultimately depends on the judgment of a single authority figure. This creates a paradox. The group functions as a unified entity, but its survival is tied to its decision of one. This dynamic generates a form of tension that is both structural and psychological. The leader must act for the collective, but the weight of these situations, those action is carried alone. This separation reinforces the idea that authority can be isolating even in a shared environment. A further layer of conflict emerges from the constant contrast between control and chaos. The structure, routine, protocol, and communication system represent an attempt to impose order on an unpredictable reality. This system provides a sense of stability, yet they are constantly challenged by force that do not adhere to rule or expectation. The conflict here is not simply about overcoming an external threat, but about maintaining coherence in the face of disruption. It reflects a broader idea that order is not a fixed state, but something that must be constantly created and defended against the intrusion of randomness. The psychological tension within the film is equally significant. The sustained pressure of the situation does not allow for emotional release or reflection. Instead, it requires continuous focus and composure. This creates an internal conflict between the human need for rest and demand of the rule. Fatigue, stress, and responsibility accumulate, yet they can't be openly expressed without compromising effectiveness. The result is a form of restrained tension where emotion is present but controlled. This suppression becomes part of the conflict itself as it tests the limit of endurance and self discipline. The film also encourages with the idea of time as a constraining force. The scene must be made with narrow window and display an alter outcome significantly. Time in this context is not neutral, actively shape the conflict by compressing thought and action. This creates a continuous sense of urgency where there is no opportunities to step back or reassesses in a calm manner. The inability to pause intensifies the stakes, turning every moment into a critical point of decision. The conflict, therefore, is not about what choices are made but when they are made. Another important aspect is the tension between visibility and invisibility. The inability to fully perceive the environment add a layer of uncertainty that permeates every decision. What can't be seen must still be counted for, and this creates a constant state of anticipation. The conflict becomes one of perception as much as action, and how to respond to it what is amplified rather than what is clearly present. This dynamic reinforces the idea that uncertainty is not an occasional obstacle but a constant condition. Ultimately, the central conflict of Greyhound can be understood as an exploration of decision making under extreme constraint. It is not defined by a single moment or event but by a continuous process of navigating pressure, limitation, and responsibility. The film presents conflict as something that exists within system, within role, and within the human capacity to endure and act. It suggests that the true challenge is not simply to overcome an external adversary but to maintain clarity, discipline, and purpose in conditions where certainty is never granted. In this way, the conflict becomes both universal and deeply human. It reflects broader question about how individuals function and placed in position of responsibility, how they manage uncertainty, and how they reconcile the need for action with the inevitability of consequence. Through its focus and restrained approach, Greyhound transforms a specific warm time scenario into a broader meditation on the nature of pressure, choice, and the limit of control. The thematic structure of the film is built on restraint, discipline, and the psychological weight of responsibility. Set with the broader context of the World War II, the film avoids expensive storytelling and instead concentrate on a small but meaningful set of ideas. These themes are not presenting through dramatic dialogue or complex character backstories but through atmosphere, repetition, and the steady pressure of decision making. As a result, the film themes feel embedded in the experience itself rather than explicitly stated. One of the most prominent themes is the ethical complexity of leadership. The film raises an important ethical question about what it means to be responsible for others in a high risk environment. Leadership is not shown as a position of power but as a position of burden. Every decision carry consequences, and those consequences often involve risk to human life. The ethical tension lies in morally comfortable if this challenges the traditional idea of clear right and wrong, suggesting instead that ethical decision making in extreme situations is often about choosing the least harmful path rather than ideal one. Closely connected to this is the theme of the duty versus personal emotion. The central figure portrayed by Tom Hanks embodies a form of leadership that prioritizes duty above all else. Personal feelings, fears, and doubts are present, but they are kept under strict control. This creates an emotional tension between what is felt internally and what is expressed externally. The film does not allow for emotional release in the conventional sense. Instead, it emphasizes the necessity of composure. This raises an ethical question about the cost of such restraint. What is sacrificed when individuals suppress their emotion in order to fulfill their responsibilities? Another key theme is isolation within collective effort. Although the character operates as part of a coordinated system, the experience of responsibility is deeply individual. The leader in particularly must make decisions that affect everyone, yet can't fully share the burden of those decisions. This creates a paradox where teamwork is essential, but the emotional weight of leadership remains solitary. The film uses this dynamic to explore the psychological impact of isolation, not a physical separation but as a condition of responsibility. The theme of uncertainty and limited knowledge also plays a central role. The environment depicted in the film is one where information is incomplete and constantly shifting. This creates a situation in which certainty is impossible yet action is unavoidable. The ethical question here revolve around trust, trust in one's judgment in system and in other. How does one act responsibly when the full picture is never available? The film suggests that leadership is not about having all the answers but about making decisions despite the absence of complete information. In terms of emotional law, the film does not follow traditional structure of transformation or resolution. Instead, it presents a more subtitle progression centered on endurance. The emotional journey is not about changing personality or perspective, but about the ability to sustain focus and compare over time. This creates a different kind of emotional engagement for the viewers rather than experiencing dramatic highs and lows. The audience is drawn into a steady state of tension. The emotional arc is defined by the capacity to continue under pressure without collapse. The film also explores the themes of faith and inner resilience through in a quiet and understated manner. The central character reliance on personal belief systems suggests that strength is not only physical or intellectual but also internal. This introduces a cultural dimension reflecting values often associated with perseverance, discipline, and moral integrity. The portrayal of faith is not overt or preachy, instead, it functions as a source of stability in an unstable environment. From a cultural perspective, the film engages with the representation of wartime values such as duty, honor, and sacrifice. These values are presenting without heavy commentary, allowing the audience to interpret them within their own context. The film reflects a broader culture narrative associated with World War II, where collective effort and individual responsibility are seen as essential to survive. At the same time, it avoids glorifying conflict, focusing instead on human experience without it. Another culture aspect is the emphasis on system and structure. The ship without with its hierarchy and portrayal protocol representing a microcosm of organized society. Within this system, each individual has a role, and the effectiveness of the whole depend on the discipline of its part. This reflects a cultural appreciation for order and coordination, particularly in theme of crisis. The film suggests that such systems are not only functional but necessary for managing chaos. Finally, the theme of time and endurance underline many of the film ideas. Time is portrayed as a continuous force that does not allow for pause or relief. This creates a sense of tension that shape both action and emotion. The ability to endure over time become a measure of strength, reinforcing the idea that reliance is not about a single moment of bravery but about sustained effort. In conclusion, the themes explored in the film are interconnected and grounded in the realities of responsibility, uncertainty, and human limitation. Through its restrained storytelling and focus setting, the film raises ethical questions about leadership, explore subtitle emotional arcs center on endurance, and reflect cultural values related to discipline and duty. Rather than presenting clear answers, it invites the audience to consider the complexity of action in situations where certainty is absent and the stakes are absolute. The emotional connection created by Greyhound is built less on traditional storytelling and more on immersive tension, psychological pressure, and shared experience rather than guiding viewers through a character driven emotional journey. The film places them inside a sustained emotional state. This approach shapes how audience connect with the story, relying on more thematic depth and the intensity of the viewing experience as an explicit narrative development. From the perspective of the mood, the film establishes a continuous atmosphere of alertness of an unseen. There is no clear emotional rise and fall. Instead, the tone remains tightly controlled and consistently tense. This creates a unique kind of emotional engagement. Viewers are not asked to react to dramatic moments or emotional revelations, but to remain mentally present within a high pressure environment. The mood function almost like a steady current pulling the audience into a state of anticipation. This sustained tension encourages viewer to internalize the stress of the situation, making the experience feel immediate and personal. The mood is reinforced by a sense of confinement, and even within an open environment, the story creates the impression that there is no escape from responsibility or danger, and this feeling is transferred to the viewer. The emotional connection emerges from this shared sense of restriction, audience being to feel what it is like to operate within a system where every moment demands attention and every action carries weight. The absence of emotional relief becomes part of the connection itself as viewers remain engaged without the opportunity to step back or disengage. Looking at the theme, the film connects emotionally through its exploration of responsibility, uncertainty, and endurance. There are universal ideas that extend beyond the specific context of World War II. While the setting is historical, the underlying experiences are relatable on a broader level. The idea of being responsible for others, of making decisions without complete information, and of continue forward despite pressure are concepts that resonate across different aspects of life. This universality allows the viewers to project their own experience on the situation onto the situation, strengthening the emotional connection. The theme of uncertainty is particularly effective in creating engagement. The film does not provide clear answer, stable ground which mirror real world life situation where outcomes are unpredictable. This lack of certainty encourages viewer to remain mentally involved, constantly evaluating possibilities and anticipating outcome. The emotional response comes from this active participation instead of passively observing. The audience becomes psychologically invested in the process of decision making. Another important thematic element is restraint. The emotional connection is not physical, and the central figure portrayed by Tom Hanks embodies the restraint, maintaining composure even under pressure. This subtitle invites viewer to look beyond surface behavior and consider the internal experience of the character. The lack of explicit emotional cues requires the audience to interpret and imagine what is being felt, creating a more active and personal form of engagement. In terms of viewer experience, the film operates almost like a situation. It places the audience in a position where they must process information quickly, adapt to changing conditions, and remain focused over time. This experiential approach creates a form of empathy that is based on sheer sensation rather than sheer narrative. Viewers are not simply observing the emotional state of the character; they are experiencing a version of it themselves. The rapid dialogue, technical language, and continuous pacing all contribute to this effect, making the audience feel as they though are the part of the environment. The film also connects emotionally through its emphasis on mental endurance. The sustained pressure creates a sense of fatigue that mirrors the experience of the character. This shared fatigue becomes a point of connection as viewers begin to feel the cumulative effect of constant tension. The emotional impact is not tied to a single moment but to the accumulation of stress over time. This gradual build up create a deeper more lasting impression. Another aspect of the viewer experience is the sense of isolation within responsibility. Even though the story involves a coordinated group, the emotional focus remain on individual accountability. This reflects a common human experience, the feeling of being slowly responsible for important discussion even when surrounded by others. The films tap into this, allowing viewer to relate on a personal level. The emotional connection is strengthened by this recognition of a familiar struggle. The stylistic choice of the film further enhance this connection. The emphasis on sound communication and control visual create an environment that feel authentic and immediate. There is a little distraction from the central experience which keep the audience fully engaged. The simplicity of the presentation allow the emotional impact to emerge naturally without manipulation and exaggeration. Ultimately, the emotional connection in this film is defined by its focus on immersion, restraint, and universality. It does not rely on traditional emotional storytelling, but instead create a shared experience of tension, responsibility, and endurance. Through its consistent mood, meaningful themes, and immersive viewer experience, the film invites audience to engage not just with the story but with the feelings of being inside it. This approach results in an emotional connection that is subtle yet powerful, grounded in experience rather than an expression. In Greyhound, character construction follows a restrained and highly functional approach where individuals are defined less by personal history and more by their rules within a disciplined system. This makes the analysis particularly focus on archetype and personality trait rather than traditional character development. At the center is Captain Ernest Krause, portrayed by Tom Hanks. He represents the archetype of the disciplined and the burden leader. Cruz is not categorized by dramatic emotional expression or visible transformation. Instead, his defining quality is consistent composure under pressure. His personality reflects restrained precision and a deep sense of responsibility. He does not lead through forceful charisma or emotional connection, but through clarity of thought and steadiness of behavior. Cruz also embodies the decision maker under constraint archetype. His personality suggests a man who is constantly aware of the weight of his choices, yet does not allow that awareness to disrupt his function. There is a quiet intensity in his character, an internal focus that replaces outward emotional display. From a reviewer perspective, this creates a form of depth that is subtle rather than expressive. He is not a character who involves dramatically, but one who endures, maintaining control in an environment designed to challenge it. Surrounding him are sporty characters who are defined more by their rules than by individual identity. For example, Commander Harry Charlie Cole, and other naval officer within the convoy system, represent the archetype of the sportive counterpart. His presence reflects coordination and shared responsibility within a hierarchical structure. His personality traits include professionalism, cooperation, and trust in the system. He does not function as a contrast to Cruz but as an extension of the same disciplined mindset. Another key figure is George Cleveland, a crew member associated with communication and operational support. He fit into the archetype of the systems operator, a character whose primary function is to maintain the flow of information and ensure that processes run smoothly. His personality is defined by attentiveness in response and reality. He represents the idea that success in such an environment depends not only on leadership but on the precision and efficiency of those executing command. Similarly, characters Sly, Signalman, Epstein, and other unnamed crew members contribute to the collective identity of the ship. These individuals fall under the archetype of the collective unit. Their personalities are intentionally understated, emphasizing traits such as discipline, focus, and obedience. They are not just designed to stand out individually but to function as part of a coordinated system. This reflects the film's broader theme that in high pressure environment the effectiveness of the group depend on the reliability of each role. From a reviewer's point of view, what stands out is the absence of strong interpersonal conflict among these characters. There are no major personality clashes or emotional confrontation. Instead, the relationships are defined by structure. This creates a uniform tone where all characters operate within the same framework of discipline and purpose. While this may limit emotional variety, it reinforces the film's focuses on realism and operational efficiency. The characterization also reflects the cultural and historical context of World War II. The emphasis on hierarchy, order, and duty shapes how characters behave and interact. Individual identity becomes secondary to role and responsibility, but this is clearly visible in how each character is presented. Their personality aligned with the expectations of environment where clarity and control are essential. In terms of personality trait, the dominant qualities across all characters include discipline, restraint, alertness, and reliability. Emotional expression is minimal and control where aligned with the film's overall tone. Even in moments of pressure, characters remain a level of composure that reflect their trainings and environment. This consistency contribute to the film immersive quality as it mirrors the expectation of real world military conduct. Ultimately, the characters in the film are designed to serve a larger purpose. Captain Ernest Krause acts as a central anchor presenting leadership and responsibility, where figures like Commander Charlie Cole, George Claville, and signalman Epstein form the supporting structures that enable the system to function. Together, they create a cohesive representation of a disciplined environment where individuality is candid to a collective effort. From a critical perspective, this approach may not appeal to viewers seeking emotional, rich, or deeply personalized character. However, it succeeds in reinforcing the film's thematic focus. The characters are not meant to stand apart, they are meant to work together, reflecting a world where survival depends on coordination, clarity, and the ability to perform under pressure. The acting performance in the film are defined by restraint, precision, and emotional control rather than over dramatic. This is a films where performances are not designed to dominate the screen through expressive intensity but to quietly sustain the tone of discipline and pressure that shape the entire experience. As a result, the emotional impact of the acting emerges gradually through subtitle choice and controlled delivery rather than visible transformation. At the center of the film is Tom Hanks, whose performance as Captain Ernest Krause set the emotional standard for the entire cast. Hanks approaches the role with a remarkable understatement. Instead of portraying leadership through commanding presence or emotional speeches, he relies on stillness, measured speech, and careful timing. His performance feels internalized as if much of what the character experiences deliberately kept beneath the surface. This creates a unique emotional effect. The audience sense the weight of responsibility without needing to see it explicitly expressed. What makes Hank performance particularly effective is his ability to convey pressure through control. There is a quiet tension in the way he delivers line, in the slight pauses, and in the consistency of his tone. He does not allow the character to break or become overwhelmed in a visible way. Instead, the emotional strain is suggested through discipline. The fact it takes to remain composed. This approach aligns perfectly with the film's overall mood, reinforcing the idea that strength in this environment is defined by endurance rather than emotional release. The supporting cast play an emotional role in shaping the film's emotional atmosphere, even though their performances are intentionally less than individualized rather than drawing attention to themselves. The supporting actor contribute to a collective rhythm. Their delivery is sharp, efficient, and focused, reflecting the demand of their role. With the structure system, each actor brings a sense of authenticity to their part, ensuring that the environment feels believable and cohesive. What stands out about the supporting performance is their consistency. There is a shared understanding among the cast of how to maintain the film's tone. No one performance disrupt the balance or shift the emotional direction. This create a uniform experience where all characters appear to operate within the same emotional framework. The restraint shown by the supporting cast mirror that of the lead, reinforcing the film emphasis on discipline and coordination in terms of emotional expression. The supporting actor rely heavily on subtitle cues, tone of voice, of responses, and physical posture. These elements may seem small, but they contribute significantly to the overall impact. The audience is not guided by dramatic gesture or heightened emotion. Instead, they are invited to observe and interpret. This create a more engaged viewing experience, as emotion must be felt rather than simply seen. The chemistry between the lead and the supporting cast is not based on personal relationship or emotional exchange but on functional interaction. The character connect through communication, timing, and mutual understanding of their role. This type of chemistry is less about warmth or familiarity and more about trust and coordination. It reflects a professional environment where individuals depend on one another competence rather than personal connection. This approach to chemistry may feel unusual for viewers accustomed to character driven film where relationships are central to emotional engagement. In this film, however, the lack of overt relational dynamic is intentionally shift the focus away from interpersonal drama and toward collective performance. These actors create a sense of unity through their synchronized behavior, which becomes a key source of emotional immersion. Another important aspect of the performance is how they align with the historical and thematic context of World War II. The acting reflects a culture of discipline, hierarchy, and responsibility. Characters speak and behave in a way that feel consistent within a military environment where clarity and efficiency are essential. This authenticity enhances the emotional experience, making the performance feel grounded and credible. From the emotional standpoint, the acting in the film does not aim to provoke strong immediate tension such as tear or excitement. Instead, it creates a sustained emotional state, a sense of tension, focus that builds over time. The performance draws the audience into this state, encouraging them to share this experience rather than observe it from a distance. Overall, the acting performance in the film are a steady, restrained, and prescient. Tom Hanks lead with a controlled and introspective portrait, while the supporting cast reinforces the film's tone through consistent and disciplined performance. Together, they create a cohesive emotional environment where chemistry is defined by coordination and trust, and where the true impact lies in what is felt beneath the surface rather than what is openly displayed. The sense of realism and depth in the film is shaped by what the film chooses to emphasize, and just as importantly, what it deliberately leaves out. Rather than building its impact through extensive backstory or dramatic transformation, the film constructs realism through behavior, structure, and consistency, creating characters who feel authentic within their environment, even if they are not deeply explored in a traditional narrative sense. When considering character development, the film takes a restrained approach. Characters are not designed to evolve dramatically over time or reveal layered personal history. Instead, they are presenting as already formed individuals operating within a defined system. Captain Ernest Krause, portrayed by Tom Hanks, exemplify this approach. His development is not about change but about sustained performance under pressure. The audience does not witness a transformation in his personality, rather than they observe how consistently he maintains control, discipline, and clarity in increasingly demanding circumstances. This form of development can be described as situational rather than transformational. The depth of the character comes from how he responds to ongoing pressure, not from how the changes over time. While this may limit the emotional arc in a conventional sense, it enhances the film focus on realism. In real world high stake environment, individuals often rely on training and established traits rather than undergoing visible personal growth in the moment. The film reflects this reality by presenting characters who are defined by their function and stability rather than narrative evaluation. In terms of believability, Greyhound achieves a strong sense of authenticity through its attention to detail and its commitment to a consistent tone. The dialogue filled with technical language and rapid exchange contribute to the impression that the characters are part of a real operational system. The performances avoid exaggeration and interaction feel purposeful rather than theoretical. This creates an environment where every action and line of dialogue appear motivated by necessity rather than storytelling convenience. The historical context of the film further support this believability. The film reflects the discipline, hierarchy, and procedural nature of military life during this period. Characters behave in ways that align with these expectations, reinforcing the sense that they belong to a structured and rule-based environment. There is a little room for individual expression outside of duty, which may reduce emotional variety but strengthen the overall authenticity. The supporting characters also contribute to the realism, even though they are not deeply individualized. Their roles are clearly defined, and their behavior is consistent with their system. This creates a collective realism where the group function as a cohesive unit. Each character believability comes from their reliability and precision rather than control depth. While this may feel limited from a character-driven perspective, it effectively supports the film focus on emotional accuracy. When examining emotional range, the films again take a control and minimalistic approach. The characters do not display a wide spectrum of emotion in an overt or dramatic way. Instead, their emotional expression is subtitled and often amplified. Captain Cruz, for example, maintains a steady demeanor throughout, rarely through his internal state to become visible. This restraint reflects the demand of his role, where emotional control is essential to reflect. The limited emotional range does not necessarily indicate a lack of depth, but rather a different form of emotional management. The film invites the audience to interfere what characters are feeling based on context, tone, and behavior. This creates a more experience where viewers must actively interpret rather than passively receive emotional cues. The depth, therefore, lies beneath the surface in the tension between what is felt and what is expressed. At the same time, this approach can create a sense of emotional distance for some viewers. Those who expect visible emotional variation or personal storytelling may find the character less relatable. However, for viewers who appreciate realism and subtlety, the restrained emotional range enhances the authenticity of the experience. It reflects a world in which emotional expression is secondary to function and where maintaining composure is a critical skill. Ultimately, the realism and depth of the film are defined by consistency, restraint, and contextual authenticity. The film prioritizes believable behavior and structured interaction over traditional character development, where it does not offer psychological exploration or broad emotional range. It provides a convincing portrait of individual operating within a high pressure system. This approach creates a form of depth that is grounded in experience rather than narrative complexity, making the character feel real where their environment, even if their inner lives remain largely unspoken. The production budget of the film reflects a measure and control approach to filmmaking, especially when viewed with the broader landscape of the modern war cinema. With an estimated cost in the range of $50 million to $55 million, the film occupies a middle position between low budget production and large scale war epic. This range is significant because it indicates a deliberate balance, even in a financial sport, to achieve technical credibility, but not so much that the film relies on spectacle to carry out its impact. From an analytical perspective, this budget range suggests a focus on efficiency and prioritization. War films often require extensive resources due to their need for large set, visual effect, and logistical coordination. However, the film avoids many of the most expensive elements typically associated with the genre. Instead of spreading its budget across multiple locations, large cast, and wide-ranging battle sequence, it concentrates resources on a limited number of critical components. A major portion of the budget is likely allocated to visual effect and digital environment The film is set during the World War II and take place largely as the creation of realistic ocean condition naval vessels and submarine interaction required significant technical investment. The ocean itself is not merely a backdrop, it is an active and dynamic element that must appear convincing under varying conditions. This makes CGI central cost factor even though the film overall scale appear contain. Another important area of the resource allocation is set construction and production design. Much of the film unfolds within the interior of a naval destroyer, including command center and communication spaces. These sets must achieve a high level of historical accuracy while also accommodating the practical need of filming. By building controlled environment rather than relying on multiple real world locations, the production reduces costs related to travel, logistics, and large scale coordination. This approach also contributes to the film's focus of an immersive style. The cast and creative team represent another layer of budget distribution. The involvement of Tom Hanks, who serves as both lead actor and screenwriter, likely account for a notable portion of the budget. However, the rest of the cast is relatively modest in terms of star power, which help keep overall cost manageable. Director Aaron Schneider adopt a restrained visual approach, avoiding elaborate or stylistically complex sequences that would require additional financial resources. This alignment between creative vision and budget constraint contribute to the film's overall efficiency. When compared to the similar film, the budget of the film highlights its strategic positioning. War films such as Drunkring in 1970s operated with a budget exceeding a $90 million to $100 million, relying on large-scale practical effects, extensive location shooting, and complex cinematography. Similarly, Midway involved a substantial financial investment to create multiple large battles with heavy use of CGI. In contrast, the film achieved a comparable sense of tension, release, and realism at roughly half the cost. This difference underscores its reliance on focus rather than scale. The film's shorter runtime, approximately 90 minutes, also play a role in budget efficiency. A more concise narrative, reduced shooting days, limit the need for additional scenes or location, and streamline post-production processes. This contribute to a more structured control expenditure without significantly compromising the film's technical quality. Overall, the production budget of the film demonstrates a clear alignment between financial planning and creative intent. In analytical film terms, the film serves as an example of how a mid-budget war film can achieve effectiveness through precision, restraint, and targeted investment. It shows that realism and immersion do not necessarily depend on the highest possible budget but on how carefully and strategically the budget is used. The domestic box office performance of the film require a different kind of analysis compared to the most theoretical release because the film did not follow a traditional cinema distribution model. Instead of being widely released in theater across a specific region such as the United States or other domestic market, the film was primarily distributed through the streaming platform Apple TV Plus. This shift significantly changes how its domestic box office is understood. Under normal circumstances, domestic box office refer to earnings generated within a country. Theoretical market often used as a key indicator of a film's commercial process. However, Greyhound was released in 2020 during a period when the global film industry was heavily affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Many theaters were closed or operating at limited capacity, which led studio to explore alternative distribution strategies. As a result, Greyhound did not accumulate traditional domestic box office revenue in meaningful ways since in it was not widely screened in cinemas. Instead of box office figure, the film performance is better evaluated through audience reach and streaming engagement with its prime release region. Particularly, the United States report at the time indicated that Greyhound became one of the most watched title on Apple TV Plus shortly after its release. This suggests a strong domestic interest, even if though it can't be measured through ticket sale. In this context, domestic performance shift from financial earning to viewer acquisition and platform growth. From an audience trend perspective, the film benefited from several factors that likely contributed to its strong reception market. First off, mm, the isolation from Tom Hanks play a major role. Hanks has a long-standing reputation for starring in historically grounded and widely appealing films, particularly those connected to World War II. This familiarity likely attracted to broad audience, including older viewers and those interested in war history. Additionally, the film concise runtime and focused narrative made it well suited for streaming consumption during a time when audience were spending more time at home. There was a noticeable shift toward content and that would deliver a complete and engaging experience without requiring a long time commitment. Greyhound fits this pattern, offering a compact and intense viewing experience that align with changing audience habit. When making comparison to similar film, the difference in distribution becomes especially important. War films like Dunkirk 1917 generated significant domestic box office revenue. The traditional theatrical release benefited from large-scale marketing campaigns and wide cinema availability. In contrast, Greyhound bypass this model entirely. While this mean it does not have a comparable box office number, it also avoided the risk associated with theatrical performances during a disrupted market. In analytical terms, this make direct financial comparison difficult. A film release in theater can be evaluated through ticket sales and revenue benchmark, while a streaming release must be assessed through less transparent metrics such as viewership data and subscriber growth. For Greyhound, success is better understood in terms of its ability to attract and retain viewers on Apple TV rather than its ability to generate domestic box office income. Another important consideration is that the film mid-range production budget allow it to adopt more easily to its streaming model. Larger, high-budget films often rely heavily on theatrical earning to recover costs, whereas Greyhound could achieve a form of financial success through licensing and platform distribution deals. This further reduced the emphasis on traditional domestic box office performances as the primary measure of success. Overall, the domestic box office discussion for the film is less about numerical learning and more about context and distribution strategy. The film represents a transitional moment in the industry where streaming platforms began to play a more central role in how movies reach audience. While it does not have a conventional domestic box office, it recorded strong viewership and relevance within its release region, indicate that it performed effectively within the condition in which it was released. The international box office performance of the film differed significantly from that of traditional release war film, largely due to its unconventional distribution strategy. Instead of receiving a wide theatrical rollout across multiple global regions, the film was primarily released through the streaming platform Apple TV. This decision reshaped how its international earnings are understood, shifting the focus away from ticket sales and toward digital reach and audience engagement. From a regional perspective, Greyhound did not generate notable international box office revenue in the traditional sense. In many countries across Europe, Asia, and many other major markets, the film was either not released in theater or had very limited screening. This was largely influenced by the global condition of 2020, when cinema operation was restricted due to its pandemic. As a result, international market that typically contribute significantly to the film earnings, such as China, United Kingdom, and other European territories, did not provide measurable theatrical revenue for this film. Instead, the film international presence was defined by its availability, which allowed it to reach viewers simultaneously across multiple regions. This created a different kind of global distribution model where accessibility replaced physical box office performance. In this context, international success is better interpreted through viewers' accessibility and platform penetration rather than financial return from ticket sales. The film availability in numerous countries meant that its audience was not limited by geography, even though its revenue could not be tracked in the conventional box office format. Looking at market reception, the film appeared to have resonated with international audience in a manner similar to its domestic reception. The film's theme, discipline, responsibility, and endurance within the context of the World War II have broad global recognition. World War II remained a widely studied, culturally significant across many countries, which contribute to the film's universal appeal. Viewers in regions with a strong historical interest in naval warfare or wartime narrative are particularly likely to engage with its content. However, reception may vary depending on original viewing preferences. In market where audience typically favor large-scale spectacle, expensive storytelling, emotionally driven narrative, Greyhound restrained and minimalistic style may feel less conventional. Conversely, in regions where viewers appreciate realism, technical detail, and focus storytelling, the film approach may be seen as a strength. This suggests that its international appreciation is not uniform but influenced by cultural expectation and genre preferences which a niche market. The film marketing impact also play a very important in understanding the international region, like major theatrical release that rely on extensive global marketing campaigns. Greyhound benefited from a more targeted promotional strategy centered around digital platform. The presence of Tom Hanks significantly enhanced its visibility worldwide. Hanks has strong international recognition, and his association with historically grounded film contributed to the film credibility across different regions. Additionally, the marketing emphasized the film realism and intensity rather than spectacle. This positioning aligning well with streaming audience who often prioritize accessibility and content quality over cinematic stage. The digital release allow market effort to focus on global simultaneity, ensuring that audience in different regions could access the films at the same time. This contrasts with traditional staggered theatrical release where films are introduced globally across markets. When compared to the similar war films that rely on international box office revenue, the difference is clear. Films like Dunkirk in 1970 generated substantial earning from overseas market, often surpassing their domestic total. These films benefited from wide theatrical distribution, strong promotional campaigns, and the appeal of large screen spectacle. In contrast, Greyhound operate within this model, making direct financial comparison less meaningful. Analytically, the film's international performances reflect a shift in industry dynamic. Instead of measuring success through box office total, it highlight the growing importance of streaming platform as global distributor. The presence of traditional international earning does not indicate a lack of reach, rather it point to a different method of audience engagement. The film's ability to attract viewers across multiple regions simultaneously suggests a form of success that is less visible in financial terms but significant in terms of accessibility and audience connection. Overall, the international box office analysis of the film is defined by context rather than other. Its limited theatrical presence result in minimal measurable earning, but its wide digital availability allow it to reach a global audience in a different way. By focusing on region market reception and marketing impact, it becomes clear that the film international performances is best understood as part of a market transition from traditional box office model to digitally driven distribution system. The worldwide gross and break-even analysis of the film can't be approached in the same way as traditional theatrical release. Instead of generated revenue primarily through global box office ticket sales, the film follow a distribution model centered on digital streaming via Apple TV Plus. This shift changed how both worldwide gross and break even are interpreted, moving the discussion from visible earning to a broader evaluation of revenue stream and cost recovery. In a conventional scenario, the worldwide gross refers to the total income generated from domestic and international box office sale combined. For Greyhound, this figure is either minimal or not meaningfully representative because the film did not receive a wide theatrical release across major global markets. Instead, its financial performance is tied to a licensing arrangement in which Apple acquired the distribution right. This means that the studio behind the film likely receive a fixed payment rather than relying on incremental ticket sales from a global audience. From the perspective of the global audience, the film arguably achieve a wide level of exposure despite the absence of international box office number. Through Apple TV, it become accessible to viewers across multiple regions simultaneously. This form of distribution remains geographical limitation and allow a film to reach a broader audience without depending on cinema infrastructure. While this reach does not translate directly into a measurable worldwide growth, it represents a different kind of value, one based on accessibility and platform engagement rather than ticket revenue. The film is best suited for a specific type of viewers, particularly those who appreciate focused storytelling and a disciplined cinematic style. In terms of audience type, the film strongly appeals to viewers who enjoy realism and intensity over emotional drama. Those interested in military environment, structure system, and high pressure discussions making will find it especially engaging. It is also a good fit for viewers who prefer immersive experience where attention is sustained rather than frequently broken by subplot or character backstories. Looking at genre preferences, this film is ideal for fan of war thrillers when that emphasize strategy, atmosphere, and realism rather than large-scale spectacle. Viewers who admire films grounded in historical setting like World War II will likely appreciate its tone and cinematic focus. Align well with audience who enjoy minimalistic narrative where the story unfolds through process and environment rather than emotional arc. However, those who prefer character-driven drama, emotional storytelling, or visually grand war epic may find the experience somewhat limited. In terms of age group, the film is most appropriate for teenager and adult, generally 15 years and older. While it does not rely on graphic content, its technical dialogue and serious tone require a level of maturity and attention that younger viewers may find challenging. Older audience, particularly those familiar with historical or military subject, are more likely to connect with its theme of responsibility and endurance. Emotionally, the films offer a tension control experience rather than a deeply expressive one. Viewers seeking excitement through constant pressure and realism will appreciate it, while those looking for emotional depth or personal character journey may find it as satisfying.